Well, that's a very good question. Ostensibly to talk about truth in conjunction with the prefix post. And the prefix is the really crucial part. It suggests there's been some sort of temporal change. Something has happened to truth. And in short, what has allegedly happened is that we have moved into a new era in which truth no longer matters, at least not in the way that it once did. Now, more specifically, a concern with post-truth originates in the context of politics, specifically in 2016 with the emergence of a certain kind of political populism, what happened in 2016. Well, as Blackburn points out, a disregard for truth in the political realm is hardly a new phenomena. We know from our own understandings of boundary work that science versus politics is a long-standing distinction between truth and something else. So this points to one of our key inquiries in this course. The prefix post indicates this temporal change, but what is it that has changed? Has something actually happened to the concept of truth so that it is radically different than it once was? Can we point to an earlier era of truth? In the wake of concerns about truth, not only was there an influx of books about bullshit, but also books about reason, mainly defending it. This indicates one of the ways that the word truth is so loaded. Its referent is not merely some relationship between discrete statements and the way the world is, but it connotes ideas of how people should reason in a broader sense. So if politics has always been a bastion of deceit, has the public changed? Has the way people reason undergone a change that would indicate a decline in the reverence for truth? It is in this context, how people reason in everyday ways, that Blackburn frames his exploration as well as his defense of truth. In the end, Blackburn defends a rather ordinary conception of truth. It's a pragmatic conception of truth, tied to the normal daily ways that people make sense of and crucially talk about the world. Following the pragmatic tradition, he wants to wrest ideas of truth from metaphysical nitpicking or in practical formalism. For Blackburn, philosophical conundrums should not prohibit us from uttering a statement like, "That's not true." We are not limited to mere warranted assertability or empirical adequacy. We can say some things are true and some things are not. I'm not so sure about this. Truth is not an ordinary word. It carries with it considerable baggage, philosophical, emotional, rhetorical, and of course, political. And our concern with truth in this course, scientific conceptions of truth, greatly complicates things. Indeed, this points to a special inquiry that we will undertake in this course. How do notions of scientific truth relate to ideas of common sense, or a more loaded term, public reason? In other words, if there is an ordinary idea of truth, how much does this resemble scientific truth? What is common about these ideas? One of the reasons I started with a philosophical perspective is to confront the state of affairs that truth is not a simple term to define. Ironically, for a term that is supposed to define certainty, there is a great deal of uncertainty about what this term actually means. And as we'll examine in a later session, how we are supposed to attain truth, especially in relation to science, has not been historically constant. Is post-truth an increasing awareness of this? Have people become more reflexive about the challenges in appealing to straightforward notions of truth? I'm not so sure about this one either. One of the key themes of our course is the politics of truth, and that politics has not been marked by skepticism about truth as a concept, but increasingly polarized claims to it. Here, Blackburn is right in that the reason we care about truth is pragmatic. We pursue and claim truth in the sciences and in politics because we want to put it to work. It fulfills some goal. Standards of truth are not arbitrary, but defined against some objective, even if that objective is to scratch a philosophical itch. And of course, a prominent lineage in STS's approach to truth follows the pragmatic tradition. What STS has been interested in, and what we are interested in here, is less the internal logic of ideas of truth, whether we can articulate conditions of truth in tidy and internally consistent ways, and more what roles and functions pursuing and claiming truth play, and the mobilizations, practices, and other consequences they entail. So these pragmatic concerns will also shape our inquiries into post-truth. If truth has stopped working, and if science has stopped working, in which ways?
Perhaps an answer to this question is the role of experts in shaping public discourse and reasoning. Did science once work better in this regard? For example, has the public obstructed useful expert advice? Perhaps there has been a shift in the dynamics of expertise, but a lament that people do not pay heed to the views of experts is also nothing new. In the 1980s and 90s, there were concerns about another postmodernism, which also sparked numerous defenses of reason to be published. These were accompanied by critiques of New Age medicine, astrology, beliefs in the paranormal and supernatural, and modern superstitions to which the public had allegedly become beholden. In 1959, C.P. Snow complained that a large proportion of society had no appreciation for the power of scientific reasoning. And going back a century from our present post-truth concerns, we find many similar complaints. This is not to say that history is repeating itself. Each of these previous crises of truth, or maybe swells from the same perennial crisis of truth, were responses to specific sets of shifting conditions borne out by particular times and places. So what is specific to our context? What conditions have sparked our recent and current post-truth concerns? Going back to our pragmatic perspective, how have these conditions changed the way that truth works? Or more broadly, how the creation, dissemination, and mobilization of knowledge works? As I've already suggested, perhaps pursuits of truth have become more polarized in response to more polarized political environments. Blackburn calls this the balkanization of knowledge. Since knowledge claims are tied to specific interests, if politics becomes more sectarian, marked by increasingly narrow and local concerns, then we might expect increasingly fragmented appeals to truth. This intersects with another relatively recent development, the growth of various digital and online media. Alongside notions of post-truth, we find concerns about confirmation bias and echo chambers. Have new forms of media facilitated these? A related phenomena is the proliferation of competing knowledge claims, especially those that you would not find in the traditional halls of knowledge.
There is a lot of evidence that the political realm has become more fractured. Polarization does not adequately capture the multiplicity of viewpoints that now inflect political decision-making. But if techno-scientific decision-making reflects this, it does not necessarily indicate that there was some point in time that this decision-making was inherently rational, just more narrow. It could be that politics and the public was not once more guided by science and truth in the deliberations, but that rather they were guided by a much more limited set of interests. In 20th century technocratic thinking, the term rationalization was frequently linked to central planning in both democratic and autocratic states. Perhaps because of this history, we are inclined to think of unilateral decision-making due to its expediency as more rational. Here, as elsewhere, there is a lot of ambiguity. From certain epistemic perspectives, a pluralism of views is a positive thing. It is a cornerstone of various ideas of democracy. And here we run into a long-standing concern within STS, how to make technical decision-making more inclusive. This is if not the key thread that will run through this course. STS itself has done a lot of work to undermine traditional conceptions of scientific truth, and much of this was in large part motivated precisely by technocratic aspirations to leverage narrowly scientific ways of thinking to serve narrow sets of political interests. In response, it has called for an opening up of techno-scientific deliberations to include a greater range of voices and concerns. However, it seems that the current situation is not quite what most of us had in mind. And the reaction is predictable. Vehement calls to reinstate the truth with a capital T. So this is the problematic that we will try to make sense of in this course. How do we cope with the more disconcerting aspects of our fractured epistemologies and politics, while simultaneously resisting those who would want to return to technocratic thinking? This too is not a new challenge. The relationship and the tensions between democratic political ideals and epistemic ones. And one aspect of this, the role of science in a democracy, was a central preoccupation of John Dewey a century ago and many other thinkers since.
So again, welcome to the course. I know that despite the circumstances, we will generate and share a lot of new ideas and insights from these questions, and I really look forward to working with all of you.